And I'm Carolyn.
And welcome to our 29th episode now of Link Up with Loveworks. And it's at Loveworks where we believe that you are never too young to be a dreamer and you are never too young to get working on that dream.
That is for sure. And our hope with Link is that each week, our special guest is going to connect with you wherever you find yourself, and they're going to inspire you to become the best version of yourself for tomorrow.
Absolutely. And today is a very special day. All days are special, but we have an incredible guest speaker that you're going to get the opportunity to meet, dreamer and doer Chris Capehart. But also today, we are in a live studio audience again, and we're so grateful to Lion and the Lamb Ministries for giving us this incredible opportunity. But we're in a live studio with a number of other young dreamers, leaders, dreamers that are a part of a summer link camp here at Loveworks. And this is our second one, Carolyn. And would you mind just sharing just a little bit about what is Summer Link Camp?
Yeah, for sure. So Summer Link, if you're wondering what it stands for, it's even with our link with Loveworks, is our goal is that we're going to launch our students into their day. We're going to inspire them, nourish their minds, and also kindle some really great relationships. And so we get to do things like this during a link interview, meet people like Chris, a person who we consider a dreamer and a doer, someone who dreams big but also goes for their dream. And we also get to do something called passion projects, Michael, yes, which I think that's the best part. For our students, they get most excited.
They get most excited for it. And I would say this, that when, looking back now, hindsight being 2020, these are the opportunities that I wish that I would have had available at the age of 12, 13, 14 years old. And that's what we get to provide our students. So, Carolyn, we are in a live studio with other students, and we talked about passion projects. So these are, again, opportunities, they're project-based learning opportunities for students to experience opportunities where they begin to hopefully discover something that they like or don't like. And I think at the end of the day, that's the win-win. And so we have several passion projects. So maybe we can get a little participation here from our studio audience. Does that sound good, everybody? All right, if you're in triathlon, could you make some noise for us?
Let's hear from our fashion group.
How about woodworking?
All right, let's hear from the business group.
Journalism.
Let's hear from the gardening group.
Woo!
Woo! Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys are.
Did we miss any groups?
We have one more. Where's our medical group?
There we go.
Medical group.
Thank you.
Woo!
Our first responders in the room. We need you. So that's just an example. So imagine this. We have incredible leaders from our community that are giving of their time this week to be able to create projects each day for our students, again, to discover if they have a particular passion in that area. So we're so excited about Summer Link Camp. Those of you that are watching, we would appreciate if you could help us out with something. We would love for you to drop in the comment box a future guest dreamer and doer that you would like us to interview. Carolyn, I heard that we have someone that's petitioning for Caesar Milan. Is that right?
I heard someone has requested Caesar Milan.
Is he still the dog whisperer?
I think so. I think he's still whispering.
Is he still the dog whisperer? I'm getting blank expressions on a few faces. I'm feeling old. Let's move on to the next thing.
That's okay. Well, in our studio audience, we just did our roll call, so it's time for roll call virtually as well. So go ahead and drop in the chat what your name is, who you are, your age, and also where you're from. And we have a question of the day today, and that is, if you were to write a book, what would that book be about?
Well, I'm working on one, as you know, and the book would be about going further and farther in life than you could ever imagine. And so whether that is in your business, it's in life, if in marriage, if it's with your children, but that would be the big idea, going further and farther than you ever thought possible.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you. How about yours, Carolyn?
So when I was, I think, 15 or 16, I was really into vampires. You know, that phase that washed over in the 2010s. So I started a book, and I wrote about 70 pages of a teenage vampire novel that maybe is calling for me to finish.
I was going to say, and hopefully our guest today can give you steps to take to get moving with that book.
We'll have to dig the manuscript out of an old PC, I think.
I love it. So again, drop in the comment box a book that you would be interested in writing, and what would that book be about. So we'd love to take just a moment and explain to you just our today's format. As you all know, this is about dreamers and doers. And so we have the opportunity to interview a special guest speaker. And we're going to have a candid conversation where you're going to get a chance to hear not only one of those guest dreams, but also to some of the obstacles and challenges that we know do exist and that kind of comes with the territory. But we hope at the end of the day, if you think about link and what is a link, think digitally. If you're on your tablet, computer, or on your smartphone, and if you want to get from where you're at to the next place, you click on it. And that's our hope today, is that you're going to be able to hear a story, and that dream is going to inspire you to take next steps in your dreams. So let's meet today's dreamer and doer.
Yeah, to warm you up, we're going to start with a trivia question. If anyone out there, first person to answer it correctly in the comment box, we'll send a prize directly to your house. And so the question, the trivia question today is, how many steps are in a mile? How many steps are in a mile? On average, it does vary per height. So it would take me a few more steps than it would take you, Michael.
Just a couple.
Just maybe.
Okay, does Triathlon have any guesses on how many steps you think that it might take? Maybe, sort of. Okay.
Ballpark?
All right, we'll get to questions and answers in a little bit. Well, let's meet our dreamer and doer today, Chris Capehart.
Chris Capehart is the author of Step, Life Story, The Blank Leader, The Intentional Year, Shaping Beliefs, and #Goals. While writing Step, Chris served as the CMO of Oven Bits, where he drove over 100% growth, adding millions of revenue, and helping to produce 20-plus features in the Apple and Google app stores. This was done in partnership with brands such as L'Oreal, Lush Cosmetics, Hilton, and Vogue. Those sound familiar. Chris resides in the DFW area, and he's married to Amy. They have 2 daughters and 1 on the way.
Chris Capehart, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Wish I could be there with you live in the studio, but excited to be coming to you from my home studio.
Absolutely. Did you hear some of the noise that our students made a little earlier?
I heard some of the noise. I loved it.
You did. Well, friends, dreamers, doers, can we give Chris a big hand?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we hope that makes you feel warm and fuzzy all the way down in Dallas. Chris, we love you. We're so grateful that you're on the show with us today.
Thank you guys for having me. I am so excited to be here and get a chance to share a little bit with you and all the students as well.
Sweet. So to kick us off, we've got some middle schoolers in the room, and so we wanted to talk about when you were in middle school. And that's not a typical experience. Most, I would say, middle school students probably head home, they log on to YouTube, they start playing video games, but that was not your experience. Instead, you started with your family, a family startup business that grossed over $200 million in a year. Was it a year? Or, well, $200 million. So can you share with us, like, what was that experience like? Because I don't think I definitely didn't do that when I was in middle school.
No, I was figuring out if I wanted to eat, play video games, or go outside and maybe do homework before bed.
Maybe.
Chris, I don't think that was part of your story, so tell us what it was like.
You know, for me, what's interesting is it was really normal because it's all I knew. My family from before I could remember were entrepreneurs in some form or sense. And so I remember getting off the bus at my family's business, and I would get off the bus and I had an office, and I would either go into my office and I would work on, back in the day, it was what they called graphic design, which is design. We just call design these days. And I would help work on flyers, and then I would ship products, and we actually made products. They would send me back into the lines where they were making products. I'd put on the hairnet, the gown, and then I'd also get to sit in business meetings. It was really a great experience because what I was doing is a lot of what I think you're doing with Loveworks and all these middle schoolers are doing right now, which is getting the opportunity to experience what business was and how it happened, how it worked, how decisions were made, and how communication happened. So for me, it was really like more school, but it was hands-on school. And so I loved it because I was just in the middle of it and I was taking in everything I could. And it was so much fun. I was given so much opportunity. We traveled a lot and got to go and see different people in different places and see how they were doing their business as well. So for me, it was really maybe the best school that I ever had.
Wow.
And I actually talk about this a lot. I think I learned more about business during that part of my life than I did in any class. And I loved all the classes that I took and they were great, but I learned so much just getting to experience what a business actually was and what it meant to run a business from the time I was young.
No, absolutely. Chris, would you say that those experiences helped you to potentially connect some of the dots while you were in school, taking math, taking geometry, English, history? What do you think about that?
100%, because I was getting the opportunity to see how those skills that I was learning, math, I think at one point when I was younger, I even asked my teacher, "Am I ever going to use this at some point?" But yeah, I got to see it really plays out. And you need these skills that you learn in school to be able to run a business or to work. Are you going to make profit or are you going to have a loss? You need to know math to be able to figure that out. The things we learned with computer, and so much about communication and history, all these other things speak into how you treat people and work with people and the outcomes of those things that you really don't realize how much you need that sometimes when you're taking those classes. But once you get in those environments, you realize everything you've learned you can apply into real life. So yes, Michael, I think I had an opportunity, and maybe it's one of the reasons I appreciated all of the classes that I got to take at that point through high school and through college, because I felt like every time I was getting the opportunity to learn, I was getting a leg up.
Yeah.
And so it was such a beneficial experience for me on both sides of the coin.
No, that's powerful. I hope our students get the opportunity to have those same kind of realizations this week as they get a chance to be part of our passion projects. Chris, I do have some curiosity, and we're going to move on to some questions about business and entrepreneurship, but I'd imagine there's a few on the live stream right now or in our live studio audience that are curious about a canvas behind you. It looks like somebody is having too much fun. What's going on with that picture?
I love this picture. This was from one of the times where I was at Loveworks. I was in your building where all the students that are in the live audience were, and we took a group of students through what's called Life Story, which is a process of helping to create the story that you want for your life instead of the story that someone gives you, and create your purpose and how you're going to walk that out. And this picture was taken in the ball pit in the front, and then Michael and Carolyn and the team framed it and sent it to me, and it now sits in my home office, and I love it. I had to have it in the shot today because I just thought it was appropriate.
Did you pull that down from the attic just for us today?
Listen, I promise it's been there and it's always there. I love this picture. I love getting the opportunity to challenge and work with students, because it was that point in my life where I made some decisions about what I wanted to do, and I started to dig in and learn. And I really think that this stage of life is where you guys have an opportunity to really set the course of your life and what you want to do and where you want to go. So I love it. This picture has been there. It'll stay there. If you were at my other office that I'm not in today, you'll see cards from Loveworks behind me as well from the students from these things. So this is all real. It's not fake, I promise.
I love it. Okay, so we have to raise the bar today so we can make it somewhere else on one of Chris's walls. Chris, we're going to get into the book Step in just a minute, and we're excited to dive into this and talk about the book, but we do want to talk about business, and you've had an opportunity to start multiple, well over 10 businesses. Not all of them have succeeded, and you've faced some hard times, some difficult times that you've had to start over. And I think that's just so relevant for anyone in this room, in our live studio audience, or those that are watching. Over the last 3 months, a number of us have experienced some type of a setback. So can you talk with us a little bit, how have you handled experiencing a setback, and, how have you started back over or just moved forward?
Well, that's true, Michael. I've failed at way more businesses than I've succeeded at. But the great thing is you don't have to succeed at every one to be successful. And I like to say that every failure is truly a stepping stone to success if you let it be. There's a great saying that says experience is the greatest teacher. And what I think that means, and what it's always mean for me, is when you step out and you do something and you experience it, you learn. And if you don't quite succeed the way that you wanted to, you can take lessons from why you didn't succeed and apply them the next time around. So for me, every time that I quote unquote fell, and I don't really believe you fell unless you quit and you give up for sure, but every time you fell, I'm learning new lessons that I'm putting in my pocket, if you will, to say, okay, next time around, here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do differently because I learned, I have experience now. And this is something that it's so hard to get, but if you really look at every situation, every opportunity, whether it seems like failure or not, as it really is a leg up, it's a stepping stone because you just experienced something that someone else hasn't experienced, and you can take from that, you can use that, you can learn from that, approach these types of things. And yeah, I one of the biggest, I think, ones is we started a company out of college. We raised money from friends and family. It was a tech startup, and we went after it for a couple of years. Put all the money that I had into it, put family money into it, and we came to a day where we felt and we had to shut that down. And that was one of the hardest days of my life, telling friends, family, and then even looking at myself and realizing I lost everything that I had, and telling everybody else we also lost what you had too because we failed. That was a really tough day. And I'll be completely honest, I didn't get up the next day and start over. I wish I would have. It took me a few days. I was a little bit put back, if you will. But finally, I decided that no matter what, I knew that what I felt was inside of me was the ability to succeed. And I felt that I had learned so much from that opportunity that I had to pick myself back up. I had to take one foot in front of the other, take one step, and keep moving forward. And I think I've had that happen so many times. And the reality is, every person is going to have situations like that, whether they're in business, whether they're with family, they're with school, personal situations. You're going to have times where you feel like you fell and you feel like it's the end of the world, but it's not. It really isn't. All you have to do is take the next step the next day, get back up, and take one step forward, learning from what happened the day before. And I'm telling you, you'll look back one day and you'll realize how far you've come because you just chose to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Carolyn and I both got excited. Chris, if you don't mind, and I know that our viewers and our live studio audience could just be thinking to themselves, this almost kind of sounds like, a fairy tale story, and thinking to themselves, well, that's great for Chris. Chris, I believe part of your story really reads like a movie. And would you mind just sharing with us, you talked about some turning points and setbacks with business, but you also could have had them just with your family. And you get pretty personal with us in the book Step. And whatever you're comfortable sharing, but would you mind sharing with us a little bit about just your mom and your dad?
Sure, I'd love to. The story of, Chris, got off the bus and had the family startup and it did all of this business. A lot of people would think, oh man, you just had such a leg up, and I did in some respect. I was taught and trained, but at the same time, a lot of what people don't realize is that very early on, around the time I was 3 or 4, that my parents had gotten a divorce. My dad chose not to be faithful to my mom. He was actually a pastor. And during the middle of a service, 3 men came in and confronted him for what he had done in the middle of a service. So it was a bit crazy. My mom never quite recovered from that. And ultimately, she ended up committing suicide and taking her life. And this was all during this same point. In fact, I'm the one that walked in and found her after she'd shot herself when I was in high school at the time. And my dad, our relationship, obviously, with all of this was completely strained. So I've got so many things that have happened to me, and I know everybody has a story, but it sounds perfect on the outside. It sounds like this beautiful masterpiece, but you start to look at it, and there was a lot of crumbled pieces, if you will, throughout the whole story, that time after time after time again, I was getting dealt these blows. At least that's what they felt like for me. When things like this would happen, it felt like a punch in the gut. And I don't know that I've been punched too many times really hard in the gut, but that's really what it felt like. And it honestly felt like somebody was taking you and pushing you back, like you were behind the curve because now something else had happened to you. And I really do believe this. Success in business is phenomenal, but it's not the only thing. In fact, family, relationships, I believe those things are incredibly important, maybe the most important. And I feel like some of those challenges are the hardest challenges to overcome. Not having a perfect home life with 2 parents together, and whether that's perfect or not, but I'm saying that's what I wanted as a kid. I didn't have that. I didn't have two parents in the same house. I had parents that were fighting with each other and then ultimately lost both of my parents. So I think those were things that tried to set me back. Those were things that tried to take my confidence as a person and say, you're not good enough. Your parents didn't love you enough. You made mistakes. All of these thoughts that would come into my head. And when I look at other kids, look like they had it all together. Some kids might have looked and thought I had it all together just because some of my family had some money. Because I looked at it and I felt like this whole situation was falling apart. And I looked at other kids and I said, man, I just wish I had a mom and a dad. I just wish that I had someone to come home and do dinner with. And, that was really tough for me. And so I think for me, those were the really defining moments in my life. And that was all throughout middle school and high school. Those were the defining times where I had to choose, who am I going to be? There was all of these situations that had tried to tell me who I was going to be. I like to say that, statistically, based on all these things, I should not be successful. And successful is not just business, it's family, relationally, all these types of things. But I shouldn't be because of all of this that I went through. Yet each day I had a choice to make, and I was not perfect. I was not perfect at all. I made so many mistakes. I wanted to give up so many times during the process, but for some reason I decided to put one step in front of the other, even after messing up time and time and time again, even after feeling worthless time and time again, feeling like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't accomplish anything because look at all the stuff that had happened to me. And I was fortunate to have some people speak into my life, fortunate to have people say, no, get up, Chris, take one foot, put it in front of the other. You can write your own story for your own life. You don't have to let the circumstances that have happened to you dictate the future that you're going to have. And that was my everyday. And I'll be honest, it's still my everyday. I still live with the images of finding my mom after she committed suicide. I still live with seeing my dad take his last breath. I still live with all of these things. I live with the things that the kids said to me, the bullies, and you can't do this, you're not going to amount to anything. I live with all of those statements. And every day I still have to make a choice as a 35-year-old that I'm not going to let those things define me. And that I'm going to write my own story and I'm going to let that define me. And so I think that, Michael, Carolyn, those are the things that are deep within inside of me. They're the things that resonate really strong and have tried to get me to go a different direction. But I've decided to make my own decisions and make my own choices about my life.
Chris, that's powerful. I mean, just the amount of trials that you've walked through, the mentors, the people in your life that have supported you. You've alluded to this, but to get back up and to take steps. And so I think that's a great segue to this book here. And this is your first book, Step, and it's about pursuing your dreams. And so can you tell us, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, it's interesting. When I was 14 years old, I was in an environment similar to what I think everybody is in right now, where there was a gentleman on stage and he was talking about pursuing your dreams. And we did this exercise where he wrote down on a piece of paper, what do you want for your life? And I remember at the time, one of the things that I wrote down, I still have this paper today, was I wanted to encourage and help other people live out their dreams. I saw people doing that and I thought it was powerful and I wanted it. I felt the life from it. And so from the very time this was 14 years old, and I had the thought before then, but I wrote it down on a piece of paper when I was 14. I had this idea inside of me that everything that I've gone through and the things I'm going through, not only am I going to achieve my dreams, but I'm going to help other people achieve their dreams too, no matter what happens. And so Step for me was the reality of that starting to come to life. That was me saying, okay, I'm going to start stepping out, no pun intended. I'm going to start stepping out and I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to start writing my story down so that it can empower and encourage other people that they can do it too. And I think for me, one of the things that I really wanted to do with Step is demystify the idea that success is a miracle. Success is magic. It's fantasy. And let people understand that it really is, as simple as this may sound, about taking one step at a time towards the direction that you want to go and not taking that one step away from it. And if you'll do that, no, overnight things aren't going to change, but over time they will. And there is a truth to that we all need to learn at a young age. every person, young person that's listening to this, I want you to know that you have everything you need inside of you to do everything that you are dreaming about doing, and you just have to do it one step at a time. So, Carolyn, I think for me, that was the goal. The goal is to start down this path of how can I build tools and use my story to help other people realize they've got something inside of them they may not believe is there, and show them how to do that.
I think I love that you pointed out that it happened for you. You wrote it down at age 14. And I think the older that we get, the less seriously we take those dreams. The less seriously that we're like, okay, that was just middle school dreams. Now I have to kind of shift into a real world. And so I love that you hung on to that. And you've realized it. You've written books that now do inspire people to pursue their own dreams.
I think that's so important. Your age does not matter. However old you are, the dreams inside of you are still real, and you should still start walking towards them today. Do I have dreams when I was 14 that I decided at some point weren't my dreams anymore? Sure. But I have a few of them, like this one, that has stuck with me forever. And I really believe it was that dream that was implanted back then, and the things that I did between then and now that prepared me to be able to do what I'm doing now. So I think that what you choose to do today at this age, at middle school, junior high, whatever age you are, it's what you choose to do right now that is going to help set you up for success later. So don't think, I'll deal with it later. I'm too young. It doesn't really matter. No, I think the younger you are, the more likely you can be successful if you start now. I mean, it's funny. Somebody asked me this one time. I go and I speak to adults a lot about the book. And they say, do you enjoy speaking to adults or do you enjoy speaking to kids more? And I said, well, the reality is a lot of times adults are already set in their ways. Kids still have an opportunity to change it all. And so I just want to say, whatever your dreams are, you can do them. You can go after them. And here's the thing. I love this. Somebody told me one time, and it's a famous saying. I didn't come up with it. They said, hey, if you're trying to go for the stars, or you want to go to the moon, and you go out there and you miss, but you're still out there in space, you still were successful. And so the point is this: you don't know where your dream's going to take you. I didn't know what my dream was going to look like today, 15, 20 years later, but I'm so thankful I never gave up on it. And you'll be thankful you never give up on yours.
Chris, that is so good. Thanks for speaking life just into all of us today, and encouraging us that, it doesn't matter our age. We mentioned that earlier. You're never too young to be a dreamer. Get started on your dream, making a difference in this world. You also mentioned that we have all the tools that we need, and you said all that we need to do is take steps. And if you wouldn't mind, could you give us a snapshot of one of the chapters in the book, and it's the proverbial mile. Well, and speaking of miles, is there a trivia question that we had earlier?
We did. We had someone who answered correctly online. So for someone who is 5'8", I just chose a median number here, okay. 2,256 steps to get to a mile.
Was anybody here close in your mind with how many steps it took? Said 50. Wow, those are some big strides.
Really big steps.
I love it. So, Chris, I think the proverbial mile, every chapter here is so good, so practical. But again, can you break down what is the proverbial mile, and how does that pertain to us and our dream and taking those initial steps forward?
Yeah, I'd love to, Michael. The proverbial mile is the seemingly infinite distance between where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow. And I'll say that again. The seemingly infinite distance between where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow. And I say seemingly infinite because that's what it feels like. You look at where you are, you look at where you want to be, and that distance in between is the proverbial mile, because it feels like it's a long ways away. And a lot of times it feels like it's impossible. And what I like to do, and I love that you guys talked about the steps, that I like to break down that mile and say, okay, if there's a mile or multiple miles in between you and where you want to go, maybe it looks so far down the road that you can't even orientate yourself to how far it is. You realize that to go that mile, you still have to take each one of the steps that are within sight of it. And you can't just jump from here to the end of the mile. Nobody runs a mile. Maybe, Michael, you run a mile that fast. where you can just start and you're there at the end. But
I am an
nobody can
endurance
do
runner.
that. Everybody still has to take the steps that are inside of that mile. Sure, someone has a longer stride, someone might can run a little bit faster, but you still have to take every single step. And so what happens is we get so focused on the mile that we get overwhelmed by everything that we need to do that we don't do anything. Instead, we should be looking at the step that's right in front of us, that next step we need to take that, then find the next, take another, then take another, and take another, and take another. And then we'll look back and we'll realize I'm on my way. I'm what's started. And if you look at the step, then you realize you've got the ability to do it. And if you realize you have the ability to do it, you have motivation to take that next step, and that next step, which gets you progress, which continues to motivate you and keeps you going. And so one of the things that I like to challenge everyone with is you got to know where you're going. You got to know what's at the end of the mile, but you got to focus on the step you need to take today instead of focusing on how far it is between you and the end of that mile. And if you do that, you're more likely to keep going than stop.
Sure. So our students in the studio audience right now, they're actually hanging on to your book. And I know that they're probably going to jump in right away as soon as they get home. You got one right there. Yes, I was like, we have a few. What do you hope that any reader would get out of your book?
I hope that any person that reads this book walks away realizing that the things they thought weren't possible because they felt too big and too overwhelming now feel more possible because they realize there is a step they can take towards it, and that will make them take that step. So I don't want you to read the book and not take a step. I want you to read the book and start taking steps. And that for me is what I want anyone to get out of it. Whether you read every single page or just a few pages, if you come away realizing that you can focus on the steps right in front of you and keep taking those steps for your entire life, that you will find yourself in a place that I really believe you can only imagine. I think that that is the key for me, Carolyn, that I want people to take away.
Thank you.
That's so good. Chris, as we begin to wrap things up, you are going to join other good company by answering a question that we've asked each of our guests. As you know, Loveworks primarily works with students that are middle school age into high school. And so the question that we have for you today is, what one piece of advice would you give either to your middle school or your high school self?
That's great. And I've been thinking about this question, and it's an interesting one for sure. But I think what I would say, the advice I would give my middle school or high school self would be to really rightly value what people say. And this is what I mean by this. There are so many words spoken about you, around you as a kid, whether it's people on the playground, in class, it's parents, it's teachers, whoever it is. There's so many people that speak discouraging words that we a lot of times take and internalize and make our own. Because somebody said, I'm not worth it, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I'm not athletic enough, whatever, I'm not smart enough. And we start to take that and believe that about ourselves. So what I would tell my middle school and high school self is, don't believe the lies that other people say about you. Give them way less value than you're currently giving them right now. And create your own version of who you are and walk that out. Let your actions tell the story, not the opinions of people whose their opinions don't really even matter. And I would say, so along with that is give less value to the opinions of other people, especially when they're speaking negativity over your life. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me as a kid. I think it's still a really challenging thing because you want people to like you. You want people to think highly of you, to say good things about you. And so we try to do things to make other people think better of us instead of doing the things that we have in our heart. And so I just would challenge each and every person to build that vision of yourself, build your own dream, your own story, and walk after that, and let the opinions of other people that try to dissuade you from that and try to speak negatively about you, let those things go. Let them fall off your back, like water off a duck's back, as they say. I don't even know if that's the right saying, but that's how I say it.
Chris, that is powerful. I know it's not as easy as just pressing delete on those words, but I love what you said. Let's just push those words aside. And I believe that finding and discovering a passion and your dream and taking those steps will far outweigh those negative words that have been spoken over our lives. I hope everybody really takes that to heart. Well, Chris, as we get ready to wrap up, we want to encourage anyone that is watching to drop a question in the comment box. We're going to take just a couple of minutes, and we're going to have Q&A from our live stream and also from our live studio audience. So live studio audience, young dreamers and doers, get your question ready. But in the meantime, Chris, we want you to wrap it up with our last minute link. And this is where we give you, our guest, 1 minute to bring it all together and share whatever is on your heart to encourage our big dream. Chris, are you ready?
I'm ready.
You are always ready. Set and go.
There is a unique and special dream that was put inside of you before you were born. And I want to see you develop that thing, that dream, that passion, that vision that you have, because you are unique and only you can bring that dream, that vision to life. You are meant to bring it to life. So today and every other single day of your life, take a step forward every single day, knowing that you have everything you need to become the person you are meant to be. And that is all that I want to say to you. If you don't remember anything else, remember you have everything you need on the inside of you. Just keep taking those steps, one step at a time.
Boom, right there. No, we don't. We got it wrapped up. Well, students, I hope you heard that and heard that well, that you have all the capabilities, all of the power right now, and there's a dream inside of you that's meant to come to life, but you're the only ones that can do it. Chris, thank you so much for sharing those words and inspiring our students with your story and the way that you've just lived out your life and have continued to just make steps forward towards pursuing your dreams, because I know even for you, it's not over. You haven't reached the highest of the highest for yourself, and that you're still pushing. I love that. So thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Well, as questions are coming in, and again, we're going to get a couple from our young dreamers and doers, we want to remind everybody about a special new platform that Loveworks created, and it's all things digital. It's the new digital resources that our team at Loveworks has developed over the last 4 months. It's so easy to access, as easy as 1, 2, 3. Visit our website at loveworksleadership.org. You click on At-Home Leadership or Digital Resources, and one of those opportunities that you're going to have is something that we created that is called At-Home Leadership. And for a limited time, it's free courses, free leadership courses. Carolyn, I believe today we drop our 13th. Okay, our 13th leadership lesson, where we're creating content, much like what you're hearing today, that we're making in a digital format. So we would love for you to check that out.
Yeah, today's about 30 seconds of insane courage.
I like that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited. All right, so we're going to open it up for some Q&A. So students, do you have any questions for Mr. Chris? Miss Corey? Yeah. So Corey asked, after the aftermath of your parents, like how did you cope? How did you learn to grieve in a healthy way?
That's a great question. So for me, faith was a huge piece of it. I had a close group of friends and some family that came around me and helped. But to be honest, it was really, for me, digging into my faith and finding that there was purpose beyond this, and that I could either choose to let this define me and take my life in a path that I didn't want to go, or I could choose to use it as an opportunity to grow. And I just had this belief inside of me that I had two choices. I had the choice to continue to live and to live fully, or to die, and die, not completely die, but to die to my dreams, die to the hopes that I had. And I just decided there was really only those two choices. And I wanted this one. I wanted the one that was to live fully. And so the only way that I knew to do that was to take that, to process it. I did grieve, and I still continue to grieve. And I'll be honest, I don't know that there's a right way to do it. It's different, I think, for everybody a little bit. But I processed that. I walked it out. I was honest with my emotions. I cried when I needed to cry, multiple times. And I used that pain as motivation to keep going. I said, you know what? This was not what was supposed to be. This was not the story that my mom was supposed to have. This was not the story. So I'm still here. And because I'm still here, I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to make something out of myself. I'm going to do something different to prove that this was not a waste. And so for me, it was a combination of, grieving correctly. And I'll be honest, like there are still days today where I do that. I mean, I still, every Mother's Day is still a tough day for me. And I heard somebody say this, when you go through something really hard, really tragic, you never forget it. Sure, time allows you to maybe more easily cope with it, but you never forget it. So don't forget it. Use what you learn in that time as motivation to keep going forward. And that's what I would encourage you to do.
Miss Sky. The question is from Sky, what encouraging words would you give, Chris, to someone that may be battling depression?
And I'll close. I definitely battled it as well as a kid. And I think what's interesting, the more that I've gotten to know more people and hear more people's story, I realized, and this is part of what I would say to that person, depression is something that most people battle in some form or format. And I think a lot of times we get into a moment where we are feeling depressed and we think we're the only ones there. And I think the biggest thing that I would share with that person is you're not alone. There's a lot of people that feel this way. And when you feel like you're alone in it, you isolate yourself and you don't open up and share with other people. So I would say you're not alone. Share with people that you trust, people that are around you that you know will help you. Be open with those people when you're in those moments, because that openness, if you will, that light that you bring into that dark area can help you heal, and it can help give you the encouragement you need from other people to walk past it. I think it's when we find ourselves in those moments and we isolate ourselves that we risk, really risk not going the right direction. But when we're willing to open up, I think that's when we can make change. And I'll say this for me, when I'm in those moments of feeling down or depressed or, hey, things didn't go my way and I feel overwhelmed, one of the things that I've learned to do is to do something out of my comfort zone that would encourage and show love to another person. And every time I do that, it changes how I feel about myself. So this is just another piece of practical advice. If you're feeling that way, or you ever get to a point where you're feeling that way, go out of your way to make someone else's day and just see what it does for you.
That's great, Chris. I'm nodding my head. I know there's not a there's not a formula for it, but I'm definitely agreeing with you. Chris, we have time for just one more question, and this is from our live stream. And the question has to do, I think it's a great way for us just to really wrap up and close things. But the question is, what do you do if you don't know what your dream is?
I think one of the best things you could do is to explore. I think this is a big thing that Loveworks does as well. You have kids that come in and they're trying out medical, they're trying out business. Try things, explore things to figure out what it is you really like and where you have a passion. One of the things that I'm so thankful of when I was young is I did a lot of things. I did some rodeo stuff. I did taekwondo. I did athletics. I did music. I did all of these different things. And it was experiencing a lot of these different things that helped me define and really learn what it was that I love. So explore, have fun, try new things.
So good. Well, Chris, thank you. Just having you, we've been anticipating this interview, this conversation for a number of weeks, and I've just been inspired sitting in this seat. I know your story, but I felt like today I'm hearing it all over for the first time. So thank you again for helping us to make us better today.
Thank you guys for having me. I really is an honor to be here.
And don't go anywhere, because we are going to take a group picture with the book Step hopefully those that are watching. Oh, Chris, would you mind giving a quick plug? Where can, and I know this isn't the only book. We have the Intentional Year. We have the brand new journal. But for those that are interested, where can we find Chris Capehart inspired resources?
So chriscapehart.co is my hub for everything that I've done at this point. So that you can go to chriscapehart.co.
That's the place to go. Awesome. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us. We hope that you were as inspired as we were today. We want to just give you a heads up that next week we could not be more excited about another friend joining us in the live studio, which is going to be fun. His name is none other than Tyler Overton. Carolyn, I heard he is now a 3-time guest on Dreamers and Doers.
Yes, but this one's going to be a little different.
It is. It'll be his first Monday interview, and we're really excited. Tyler was nominated Rookie Teacher of the Year here at Norman Public Schools, and he's going to share not only just what inspired him to become a teacher, but also some other big dreams that I know that are going to stir your heart. So, again, we want to thank you so much for tuning in. We always want you to remember that real leaders, they don't blend in, but they stand out.
Dream big.
And do your dream.